You're with Clement Manyathela.
7:02. Let's walk the talk.
It's 25 minutes before 11 o'clock. So we started a series a couple of weeks ago where we look at what different belief systems say about the afterlife. We've been looking at really different beliefs since when? A couple of weeks ago. So we looked at different Christian denominations and what they say about the afterlife. We looked at what Islam teaches about the afterlife. We've looked at African spirituality. At some point, we'll touch on Scientology and many other belief systems. Today, we are looking at Judaism and what it teaches about the afterlife. As I said before, and I say all the time, I think we need to be more curious about this mystery called life. And I think part of being curious is asking the questions, being inquisitive, and just wanting to know, am I this physical body or am I more than this physical body? Whatever you believe in, I want to know if you actually believe in the afterlife. What are your beliefs around that? Do you think things just stop as soon as you stop breathing? Do you believe in reincarnation? Do you believe in eternal life, purgatory? What is it for you? You can call on 011-883-0702. The WhatsApp line is 072-702-1702. Rabbi Levi Avtzon is a senior rabbi at the Linksfield Synagogue who's going to guide us through today's conversation as we look at what Judaism teaches about the afterlife. I think from what I've seen before, there are sort of like, different schools of thought when it comes to the afterlife, death in Judaism. I think today, hopefully the rabbi will help us understand where those different positions stand. Rabbi Avtzon, thank you so much for making time for us. Really, really appreciate it. Good morning.
Thank you. Good morning, Clement, and thank you for the opportunity, and good morning to the listeners.
Maybe let's start with you giving us a brief overview of how the concept of the afterlife fits into the Jewish belief.
So, very fascinating question. And often when people talk about the afterlife, I ask them the question, what about the before life? In other words, the question is not only where we go or if we go anywhere after we pass away. The question is, where do we come from? Did we start at conception, and now the question is where we go after we die, or is it a different dimension that we came from at birth and we return to in a different form post-death? So Judaism believes very much that there's two universes. There's the physical, the flesh, the stuff we can touch, the world we're living in, the radio, we're talking to each other, and then there's a much deeper dimension, a dimension that cannot be seen, cannot be touched. But the spirit, what we call the spiritual world, just because we don't have a better word to describe it. And that's soul. Soul means the part of us that cannot be touched, cannot be seen, but if you ever held a baby in your hands, you know that the baby didn't just come into this world or wasn't just conceived 9 months ago and suddenly is so pure. There's this deep knowledge, I think I had a child a few months ago, my wife and I, and you hold this baby and you just have this knowledge that it came from somewhere. And if you've ever been at the moment of death or just before it, and as a rabbi, unfortunately, I've been there many times, you see often, sometimes, it's a very hectic, chaotic death, but most death is actually quite peaceful. And there's almost this feeling that there's a transition to another dimension. So the way we see it is that if we had real eyes, and what I mean real eyes is true perception, if we were real spiritual beings, the conversation would be the exact opposite. We wouldn't be asking, is there an afterlife? We would be asking, is this physical world real? Because the physical world is, just particles and DNA, and, the more we understand physics, the more we understand that almost none of it is actually real in the sense of the word. But the stuff that is real is soul and love and connection and eternity and love, and all these beautiful things that cannot be touched and seen, but we deeply believe is the truest sense of reality.
And is there like a single view of the afterlife in Judaism, or is there?
That's a great question. So Judaism is very much it's an old religion. It's thousands of years old, and it's constantly evolving its thoughts. Now, evolving doesn't mean changing, but it means that over time, it gets expressed in different ways, etc. So there are various opinions throughout the sages. If you go as back to the Talmud and Jewish mysticism, there are various disagreements. There are certain principles they all agree on, but there are like subtle differences, which makes it fascinating.
Yeah. Okay. Let's look at what the belief then says about the influence of how, Jewish people live their daily lives or observe even religious practices. Because often, when you talk about that afterlife, there's often, and which will lead me to my next question also about the reward and punishment, because there's so much that's got to do with how we live our lives today that somehow has an influence and an explanation on what's possibly to come on the other side.
So that's amazing. So I'm going to take it from two different angles. Yes, we very much believe in reward and punishment, and we believe in this idea that after death, a person pays the account for what they've done. Judaism doesn't really believe in eternal damnation, the idea that someone's going to suffer forever unless they were extremely evil. There's a cleansing process. Usually it's seen as up to 12 months. That's why Jews have a custom to pray for their loved ones after they pass away. They say a prayer called the Kaddish for a year to help their beloved one, whether it was a parent, whoever it was, go through that transition. So we do believe in that idea of reward and punishment, but the other angle of it is we're very focused on this world rather than the world to come. In other words, we believe in the world to come, and it's very much a part of our philosophy, but we see the deep value of life itself, seeing, and let me explain why. If I only focus on the world to come, so then when I see imperfection in this world, I say, never mind, the world to come, everything will be great. And I almost abdicate my responsibility in this world. But if I see myself as a messenger, God sent me before I was born, before all of us were born, we were spiritual beings. And then God chooses to give us a body, put us into this physical world with all the temptations, etc. And he says, now go make this messy world a little better. So we're very focused, centric on this world. In other words, what can I do? An act of goodness and kindness in this world. I can't look at somebody who's, suffering or someone that's impoverished and sit there saying, I don't have to help them. Don't worry, they'll get heaven. They're good. They're sorted. No, my job is I see someone hungry, I have to give them food. If I see someone suffering, I have to alleviate the suffering. So we believe in heaven, but we're also very much centric here. And that's why Judaism is so full of commandments, thou shalt and thou shalt not. It's a very action-based religion. It's not ascetic and, flying above the universe and escaping reality. It's very much in this world. Everything is very physical. The prayer is physical. The Sabbath is physical. The Passover Seder, whatever we do, all our rituals have an emotional, spiritual dimension, but are fundamentally physically focused because our job is to refine this world.
Yeah. Okay. It's going up to 15 minutes now. Before 11 o'clock, Rabbi Levi Avtzon is a senior rabbi at the Linksfield Synagogue, guiding us through this conversation as we try to figure out what Judaism teaches about the afterlife. What questions do you have for Rabbi Avtzon? You can call us on 011-883-0702. Maybe you are Jewish and you practice Judaism. What are your thoughts on the afterlife? How does your life get governed based on how you're living now and what's expected based on what Judaism teaches about the afterlife? 011-883-0702. Alternatively, you can send your WhatsApps on 072-702-1702.
You're with Clement Manyathela.
702. Let's walk the talk.
It's 12 minutes now before 11 o'clock. We are in the middle of the discussion about the afterlife and what Judaism teaches about it. Previously, over the last couple of weeks, we've looked at what different Christian denominations believe about the afterlife. We've looked at what Islam teaches about the afterlife, focused on African spirituality, and today we're focusing on Judaism. Want to hear from you though on 072-702-1702 or WhatsApp's on 011-883-0702. That's where you can call. That WhatsApp line is 072-702-1702. Here's one.
Good morning, Clement. My belief with the afterlife, to me, I know that there are 3 stages of life. The first stage will be when you are in your father's loins. In that period, you are alive as a sperm, and then before you enter into your mother's womb, when the sperm goes into the egg, there is a zinc explosion, whereby you die, and you will now reincarnate, or you will have a second life in your mother's womb. But that's where you will live in your mother's womb, and you will spend close to 9 to 10 months in your mother's womb. That is life. That is life inside your mother's womb, and then the second stage will be when you live, when you are alive as a human being in this world, and then that will ultimately take you to the last stage of life, where you will die, and then you'll be buried in the tomb, and then you will get a new life that is an everlasting life, a spiritual life. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you so much for your input. What do you believe about the afterlife? You can share that with us as well on the WhatsApp line or through a call as well. Rabbi, I've got a few questions here from some of our listeners. I know you touched a little bit on this. Maybe you can just re-emphasize it. Someone who's asking about just the concept of judgment or reward, or the concept of hell versus heaven. What does Judaism teach about that?
Okay, great question. So often we use words. The word like hell has different meanings for different people. So we believe that everything we do in this world has immense consequences. Both the good and the opposite. Whatever we do has impact, right? If I bring love and compassion to people, I make the world a better place. If I cause pain, I literally cause that individual and the world hurt. And at some stage, a person pays for the choices they make. Otherwise, there's no free choice, which is a whole separate conversation. Free choice means I make choices and I pay the consequences. But in some religions, the idea is very much I made bad choices and therefore unredeemable. I can never really climb back out. Judaism, on the other hand, believes that a person after death, their soul will pay, not necessarily pay, but go through a cleansing process. And the process is not so much to punish them, but as to get them ready for their reward. Because the goal is that everyone has to eventually come to a place that they can get rewarded for the good that they've done. But we also tarnish ourselves, we blemish our soul by the mistakes and the bad decisions we make. So according to Judaism, there is the idea that a person goes through what's called Gehenna, which is a huge body of literature, but fundamentally the idea is it cleanses the soul. It's a spiritual cleansing that allows the soul then to go into its place of eternal rest.
Morning, Chad in Johannesburg here. I would just like to ask, please, is it true that the afterlife has similarities to the subconscious mind? The same, basically, space that we go to during dreams, during REM sleep?
All right, thank you for that question. Yeah, Rabbi?
So interesting. The Talmud tells us, the Talmud is the main body of Jewish thought and law. It says that sleep is 1/60th of death. What it means is that we tap into, at least in a small way, the dimension that we will tap into once a person passes on. And when we're asleep, it's almost like our soul goes back to its source to get rejuvenated for the next morning and for the journey of the next day. So each day is a mini life, and each evening is a mini death. And yes, we believe that there is this idea that we're constantly going and connecting to the other side of ourselves. And I mentioned earlier in the show that it's important when we talk about afterlife to talk about before life. And the reason I brought that up is because if I realize that there's always two parts of me, even when I'm in this physical world, I'm not just flesh. I'm not just a physical body that's, with all the physical needs of mine. I have a spiritual dimension even here that I could tap into. And that spiritual dimension has been with me before I was born and will be with me after I die. And the truth is, it's the only part of me that's eternal, because my body, once that my time comes up, it's going to be gone. But my soul is eternal. So when I realize that, and I realize I'm always connected to my soul, and if I tap into my spiritual dimension, my holiness, my inner refinement, then yes, I'm very much tapping into the afterlife in this very world.
And then someone else is asking you to clarify more about what you said earlier about the cleansing process. You said that that's why you've asked, you pray for like a year for the souls that have, people that have passed. What happens, like what do you believe in Judaism happens during that cleansing process? Are you asking for the people to be accepted in, I don't know, a version of heaven of sorts, for people to be cleansed?
So first of all, yes, we're asking them to be able to go quicker into heaven, but also we're asking that whatever process they have to go through, because fundamentally, when they go into heaven, which is the most beautiful, refined, holy place, they have to be clean. That soul has to be cleansed. So if they're going through the cleansing process, we're praying for our loved one. Please, God, make the journey not too painful for them. Please let them go through it as, without pain, without grief, they obviously are going to go through some journey. Just like when a soul comes into this world, they go through a journey 9 months in their mother's womb, which is almost like downloading the soul into the physical world. They now have to upgrade their soul back into the spiritual dimension, back into heaven. So we pray. A few years ago, my father passed away, and for 11 months, each morning and each afternoon, I would go to synagogue and I would say a prayer, just like many, many Jews do, and it's called a Kaddish. And basically, I'm almost sending love and power back to my dad. And we're told not only through Kaddish, if I take on a good deed, if I do acts of kindness, if I do charity in his memory, I'm literally helping him in whatever transition he has to go through.
Okay. Got it. We've got a call from Colin, who's calling us from Soweto in Orlando West. Colin, what's your question? Good morning.
Morning, Clement. I hope you're fine. I'm fine.
Sure. Go ahead.
Yeah. About cremation. I want to know, the Rabbi man, what happens, or what is cremation, about cremation?
Okay.
Good question.
What is the belief of the Judaism about cremation? If a person is cremated.
All right. What do they believe about cremation? And I must say, Rabbi, there are a few other messages coming through on the WhatsApp line asking exactly this question about cremation. Someone was asking that, should I be cremated? Will my afterlife be as if I have a natural death? So lots of questions about cremation. What does Judaism teach about that?
So Judaism is not a fan of cremation. Judaism, based on the Bible, there's a verse that says, you came from the dust and you should return to the dust. Right? If you read the story in Genesis, God created Adam from the dust. And Judaism has always believed that we have to return the body in its dignity. We received it in dignity, and we have to return it in dignity. And giving it back to the earth where we came from is a dignified way. And Judaism has always believed in natural burial, the way we've done it for thousands of years, rather than cremation. Because it's an act of honor to the body. And I just want to add to one point, because it hasn't come up yet, the idea of resurrection. Judaism believes that, please God, one day when the Messiah comes, the time of redemption, all souls that passed away, all people that passed away, will come back into the physical world in their bodies. Now, obviously, most people's bodies in the ground has decayed, but nevertheless, we're told that if they treated the body in dignity and buried it in the ground, then the body is still, in some dimension, still there, and when the soul comes back for the resurrection, it will come back into the body. So Judaism has always been very against cremation, because it says it's not your body to do anything with. It's God's body, and the body still has to come back one day for resurrection. So put it back to where it belongs and let nature do what it needs to do.
Okay. Rabbi Levi Avtzon, thank you so much for joining us this morning. He's a senior rabbi at the Linksfield Synagogue, just helping us understand what Judaism teaches about the afterlife. Next week, around the same time on Monday, we're going to bring in another belief system in here, what that believes about the afterlife. It's now 2 minutes before 11 o'clock.